Hey guys, welcome to the first ever episode of Workshops from Mr. Hoff's Bedroom. Um, this one is going to be focused on Science 13. I don't want to try to teach you everything like this, but I want to give you a little bit of guidance through the workshop doc as some of you have struggled in person. Learning at home probably isn't going to be significantly easier than that. So for episode 1, focusing on solar panels, I don't want to explain how they work right now. There's a link in the ClickUp that has, I think, a wonderful video to demonstrate what goes on. But what you need to understand is, remember from back in Science 11, forever ago, the photoelectric effect. There are materials with the property that when light hits them, electrons get knocked off. And electricity gets its name because it is the flow of electrons. The history of the name is a little more complicated than that, but if it helps you remember, electricity is just electrons, and they're moving. So a solar panel takes the sunlight and converts it to electricity by using the photoelectric effect. Please watch the video I linked in the ClickUp. It has a better description of how they actually work, but what I want you to focus on with your diagram is the electrons. Where do the electrons go? Obviously, they create power somewhere, and then where do they go? Where do they end up? Give me their path, their little life story of what goes on. That's what I want to give you for episode 1 right now. Episode 2, we start talking about communication and how we use waves to communicate. This, honestly, is probably the hardest thing to wrap your head around. So if you're feeling bad about not really understanding it, don't. That's fine. That's normal. It takes time to figure these things out. But what I want you to picture right now is a wave. Just a simple, smooth curve. A wave. Now I want you to imagine some wave that might contain information. You know that sound is made of waves. Walkie-talkies are a good example. That wave is going to be a little more complicated. There are going to be different heights and widths between the peaks and the valleys, but that's because it has information. The thing you'll read about in episode 2 is this very simple wave is what you would call a carrier wave. Okay? Use that framework. This is the carrier wave. It's long, it's in the radio wave portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, and these sound waves, this information that we have, is not. It's, consider it smaller than that. So what you want to do is put this information onto the carrier wave. And obviously with electromagnetic waves, it's not as simple as just grabbing and setting it on top of. You can't do that. So there are 2 important parts to wireless communication: the transmitter and the receiver. What the transmitter does is it creates this carrier wave. It creates the carrier wave, which is an electromagnetic wave, and also puts information on it. So you have a steady stream of this carrier wave, and when it's time to put information on the signal, it just no longer makes it smooth. It modulates it. Modulation is the key. When you modulate the wave, you're altering maybe the height of certain parts or of the whole wave, or in some cases, the frequency. But let's hold the frequency steady and try to visualize what it would look like to modulate or alter this carrier wave in a way that would contain the information we want to convey, in this case, a sound wave. I'm gonna put that picture up. I want you to think about that, then I'm gonna put the picture up in 3, 2, 1. That's what gets transmitted. That goes through the air and gets picked up by the receiver. It basically takes an antenna on the receiver and it pushes it back and forth, you can imagine. And the antenna gets pushed and there's a sensor feeling how it gets pushed, what direction and how far. So as long as you know the frequency of the carrier wave, you know how to flatten that back out into just the information you want. That's the kind of a little bit simplified, but I think hopefully understandable version of how that works. And remember, this is explained, although I admit not very clearly, in the article that I linked in the ClickUp. The last episode of this workshop doc, I don't expect you to have really much issue with at all. I would say A, make sure you're citing your sources, and B, really focus on how we protect our information. That's the most important square on that whole page. So this has been the first ever recorded mini workshop for you. I hope it was helpful. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any other questions. Other than that, just try not to stress yourself out too much. We're going to get through this. The world is going to move on. I love you a lot. Peace.